everyone is present or viewing for the first time, we welcome you and hope you will join us again. After the service, our ambassador, Linda Kittle, will be in the back with an informational packet and a mug. Please check in on Facebook telling your friends and family that you are here at Unity of Springfield, and then if you would silence or turn off your phone. Today's flowers are provided by Simone Height in celebration of her daughter's and mom's birthdays. Please join me in the mission statement. Our mission is to encourage and inspire spiritual and personal growth by empowering each other to be authentically all that we came here to be. Let's speak together the affirmation for today's daily word. I am one with God. Pain may be a part of life, but suffering is optional. We suffer when we believe we are separate from God, when we feel unloved, unprotected, or perceive life as hostile. If I ever feel ruled by such thoughts, I turn to the truth. There is only one power and one presence, God the Good. Anything to the contrary is untrue. During hard times, I seek God's presence in me, in the secret place of the Most High. I build an internal fortress of truth that withstands any fear, anxiety, or distress. In the silence, I take refuge from any struggle or suffering. I abide in comfort, joy, and peace beyond any circumstances of the world. One with God, I am always protected. The scripture for today is Romans 8:18. Together, I consider the suffering of this present time. We are not worth bearing the glory about to be revealed to us. Let's repeat the affirmation together. I am one with God.
As Sue rings the prayer bowl, please hold the following people in your prayerful thoughts for their highest and best. Raymond, Tiffany Ashley, Al, Nancy, Eddie, Lee, Gracie, John, Chris, Rusty, Patty Brett, Bobby, Jennifer, Carolyn, Jane Rachel, Jean, Stephanie, Jim, Wooter, Kaylee, Tom, the Weber family, and anyone that comes to your mind. Take a deep breath as we absorb and embrace the sounds and vibrations coming from the prayer bowl. Hold and exhale. We affirm that God is always with us, blessing us and expressing in us, as us and through us. As we begin to relax to help us be fully present in the moment, bring your attention to the crown of your head. Relaxing as you move down to your forehead, eyes, ears, lips, tongue, jaw. Roll your neck and shoulders to release tension and stiffness. Follow the relaxation as it moves down your arms, elbows, wrists, hands, relaxation taking place in your body as you move down your spine and lower back. Relax your thighs, knees, calves, ankles, feet, and toes. Take a deep breath, hold, and exhale. We pray for the highest and best for all who have been placed on the prayer list by their connected loved ones. For the highest and best experience of life, we include ourselves, our families, friends, and neighbors. For everyone on earth, we affirm bodies immersed in good health, finances to cover needs, dreams, and desires, loving relationships with family and friends, the guidance we seek, peace of mind, and spiritual transformation. We surround not only our spiritual community, but also our city, our state, our nation, all nations with prayers for fairness and safety, happiness, joy, abundance, inclusivity. We visualize peace among all in our country, in all countries, and all governments, especially those suffering in war-torn areas. We envision our country leaders coming together with the goal of compromise and fulfilling the trust we have given them. I invite our congregants here in the sanctuary and those viewing from their homes to realize and accept that we are all worthy of the good we desire, and we are loved by God just the way we are. We are so blessed by God's gifts to us of life, love, connection, thinking minds. With infinite gratitude, we share our energy with our spiritual community, extending to the whole world and everyone in it. During hard times, we seek God's presence in us. In the silence, we take refuge from any struggle or suffering. We abide in comfort, joy, and peace beyond any circumstances of the world. One with God, we are always protected in the silence.
So happy that you're back up here. Thank you to our band. Good morning. It's a little cold this morning, huh? Yeah. I've been sitting on my hands trying to get them warm, and they're still not warm. I love when our YOU, our Youth of Unity, are involved in our service, and you guys did such a great job, and look forward to more. Jen Jones is our Youth of Unity director, in case you didn't know, and we're excited because our group is growing. Yay! So great. Just so happy to have you here. Happy to have you here. Okay, we are in our fourth week of a series based on The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And so this is an all-church event. Our youth are involved in it. Our younger kids are involved in it, so it's fun. We have spirit groups going on. So if you have kids in the Sunday school department, you can talk to them about what we talk about today, which I love. So the first week we talked about our inner roommate, and I want to share with you from a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. How many of us are familiar with Eckhart Tolle? I figured there's many, many of us. So what he basically says about the inner roommate is that, have we all seen people, and I have seen kind of out on the street sometimes, that are talking incessantly to themselves? Well, he said, we're all like that, except for most of us just aren't talking out loud, right? But we all have this voice going on in our head all the time. And he said the voice that is going on our head, it comments, it judges, it speculates, it complains, it likes, it dislikes, and so on. Can we all relate to that? Yes. But he says that the voice isn't always necessarily relevant to the situation at hand, and it may be either reviving the distant past or even reviving the much in the way past, or rehearsing or imagining future situations. And when it does this here, it often imagines things going wrong and negative outcomes. And this is called worry, and I like to call this pre-paining. Anybody ever pre-pain? In the present moment, something has not happened, but you bring it into the present moment as if it is happening. We're pre-painting. We're bringing something that hasn't even happened into this present moment. He also says, even if the voice is relevant to the situation at hand, we will often interpret it in terms of the past. And I call this post-painting, where we're bringing stuff from the past. And how many of us are good at this? Like, man, we can talk about it, can't we? And we can bring all that energy up and all that pain into the present moment. And so how does it feel when we're pre-painting and post-painting? Yeah, painful. Yeah. It doesn't feel good. But he goes on to say that this is because the voice belongs to your conditioned mind, which is the result of all of your past history, as well as the collective cultural mindset that you inherited. So you judge the present through the eyes of the past and get a totally distorted view of it. And I think this is so important for us. This, to me, is what this series is about. It's really, to me, what unity is about, is the power of our mind and waking up to the point that we are willing to do the work that we need to do to heal the things that need to be healed, and to really be able to look at, we are working with a conditioned mind, right? And if we haven't done the work to wake up, we're living our life out of this conditioned mind. So we have the opportunity to recondition our mind, to recondition our consciousness. Okay, so the second week we talked about the energy of the heart. We talked about the intelligence of the heart, and that actually the heart sends more information to the brain than the brain actually sends to the heart. And so taking that time and we talked about heart math and going into that place where we breathe, we take that time to relax and breathe in through our heart space, find our center. And when we do that, then we tap into that intelligence of the heart. I mean, how many times have you said, well, my heart is what directed me to do this. My heart guided me in this. And that's very real. It's very true. But so many times we're listening to what? We're listening to the head. That is the preconditioned mind. And our heart is telling us something different. So we just want to get more in touch with that heart. Last week we talked about freedom. This week we're talking about. Last week we talked about embracing change, and we talked about emotional and spiritual maturity. That it's one thing to be spiritually awake. Spiritual maturity is when we are actually integrating these principles and these truths into our life, and we're living more from this spiritual perspective rather than, again, from our human perspective. And so this week we are talking about freedom. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So the intention is to understand that true freedom begins when we free ourselves from what is holding us from our good. And generally what is holding us from our good is pain and fear, or fear of pain, things like that. Our principle that is part of this week is principle number 3, which is I create my experiences by what I choose to think, what I feel, and what I believe. This is a basic tenet of unity, and our power of the 12 powers that we're focused on, is the power of life. And that is the Christ presence within contains the vibrating energy of life, and it inspires us to action. Life energy is the power that enables us to grow, to heal, to empower, and restore ourselves. It's a divine idea that makes wholeness possible for us. So, really when we're focused on, physical healing, we want to tap into that life center that is within each and every one of us and call that forth and feel that energy vibrating and moving throughout our entire mind and body. Okay, so I want to share with you, again, I'm going to go to Eckhart Tolle from The Power of Now, and what he says about enlightenment. And I'm going to share with you his words in this. So he says, enlightenment, what is that? So he says, imagine that a beggar has been sitting by the side of the road for 30 years, and a stranger comes by, and the beggar puts out his baseball cap and says, do you have any change to spare? And the stranger says, I'm sorry, I don't have anything to give you. And he looks at the beggar and he says, but I notice that you're sitting on a box. And the beggar says, yes, I've been sitting on this box for a long time. And he said, well, have you ever looked inside the box? And he's like, well, no, there's nothing in it. And he said, well, I encourage you to look inside the box. So he opens up the box, and what he finds is that there's a vast treasure of gold inside the box. And, with astonishment and elation and disbelief, his whole life has been changed. Well, what Eckhart Tolle says is, I am that stranger who has nothing to give you and who is telling you to look inside. I love when the lights just go, whoa, especially on a truth like that, that that it's not outside of us, that it's inside of us. He said it's not inside any box, as in the parable, but somewhere even closer, that your enlightenment is within yourself. And so he goes on to say, but I hear you say, but I am not a beggar. And so here's what he says. Those who have not found their true wealth, which is the radiant joy of being and the deep, unshakable peace that comes with it, are beggars even if they have great material wealth. They are looking outside for scraps of pleasure or fulfillment, for validation, security, or love, while they have a treasure within that not only includes all those things, but is infinitely greater than anything the world can offer. Wow, I love that. That as long as we're looking, and doesn't our world, doesn't our media, doesn't it just throw all these things at us that say, if only you had this, if only you could be this, then you would have happiness, then you would feel good about yourself. And, and I look at like our YOUers, and I think about, that age of being in school where you have all of these kids that are telling you that if only you were more this or more that, then you would be acceptable, then you would, but it's all about, isn't it? It's all about finding that within ourselves, because it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks outside of us, does it? It doesn't. We can allow people and media to try to define us and tell us what is going to make us happy in our lives. But what those of us who have lived some years have come to discover is that it's never been about that. That my inner security, my inner well-being is really about that inside job. And I got to say, I don't like that he uses the word beggar. I simply use that word because that's how he used it. I don't like that term. I don't think it's a kind term. But, oh well, there's that card. So I'll go right to him and tell him. Okay, so he asks, well, what is the greatest obstacle to experiencing this reality that my true happiness and my joy and my contentment and my security, that it all comes from within inside of me? And he says it's identification with your mind is what is the obstacle, which causes thought to become compulsive, which causes us to suffer. How many of us can relate to our thoughts becoming compulsive at times? Yeah. I can see, like I see eyes big and I see it. So I want us to all know we're all in this together. I personally don't know of anybody who does not live in their humanness and has these experiences. We're all in this together. We all journey this same path. Michael Singer from the Untethered Soul says that the prerequisite to true freedom, and I love how he says this, like some of his sentences just crack me up because it's like, yeah, this is it. The prerequisite to true freedom is to decide that you don't want to suffer anymore. Just make that decision. You don't want to suffer anymore. Although we don't really realize that we're suffering until we wake up. And to suffer is to be in pain. To suffer, and how many of us have gone through experiences where we have been in pain? Like, and it's our mind that is keeping us in pain. He says that you must decide that you want to enjoy your life, and there's no reason for stress, inner pain, or fear. Okay? Yeah. Easy, huh? But the cool thing is that we can get there, and we can get there more and more and more as we do this inner work. We're going to find that we're not as easily, our feathers aren't as easily ruffled, and as we do this inner work, that we find we walk in that sense of peace more often. So what are some of those things that take us out of that? Well, we fear that we're not good enough. Anybody ever have the sense that you're not good enough? You're not enough something? We have that fear that we're going to fail, or we're going to fall, or somebody's going to make fun of us, or somebody's going to see that we have faults. Anybody here have faults? But oh my gosh, we don't want other people to see them because they're going to judge us, He says people are constantly thinking, what if I get put on the spot? What will I say? I get so nervous if I'm not prepared. These kinds of thoughts, he said, this is actually suffering because this inner anxious thought, that is what takes us to that place of pain, right? Is these ideas that we're just not doing it good enough, or we're just not enough, or whatever comes up for us. So he says the single most vital step on your journey toward enlightenment is this: learn to disidentify from your mind. Again, I just love how he just lays it out there. Learn to disidentify from your mind. He says, just stop for a moment, because this just cracked me up, and see what you've given your mind to do. You said to your mind, I want everyone to like me. I don't want anyone to speak badly of me. I want everything I say and do to be acceptable and pleasing to everyone. I don't want anyone to hurt me. I don't want anything to happen that I don't like. I want everybody to agree with me. Right? I mean, yes. How many of us go around going, I don't care if that person doesn't like me. I don't care if that person speaks badly of me. I mean, that's where we want to get to. But the reality is this is what we've given our mind to do. And he says, and I want everything to happen that everything that happened that I do like. Then you said, now mind, figure out how to make every one of these things a reality, even if you have to think about it day and night. And of course your mind said, I'm on the job and I'm working on it constantly. And he says, here's the thing, what your mind is going to do, it's going to tell you that you need to change something outwardly in order to solve your inner problems. How's that working? It may relieve things in the short term, right? But until we get this here, until we get this, we're going to be pinged again. Something is going to come up that's going to take us off of our center again. And to me, I always look at those things, and I know that I say this, in our office too, that when we mess up on something, it's like we're not going to beat ourselves up. It's simply feedback. It's feedback to say, oh, that didn't feel so good, or that didn't work so good. What can I do differently now? So what can I do differently on that? So he says, for example, if you feel loneliness and insufficiency in your heart, it's not because you haven't found that special relationship. That didn't cause the problem. The relationship was your attempt to solve the problem. And he says all you're doing is trying to see if that outer relationship will appease an inner disturbance. And if it doesn't, you'll try something else, right? Here's another one of his lines. Again, it's where we can get to. The truth is, everything will be okay as soon as you are okay with everything. And that's the only time that everything will be okay. I just love it, because it's like it's true. But it's like, whoosh, put it out there. Here it is. And, just do it. So what he talks about is that pain is the price of freedom. And so what he says is that, really one of the essential requirements for true spiritual growth and for enlightenment is coming to a place of peace with pain. And I like to think of that as being okay to be uncomfortable with our uncomfortableness. How many of us are okay being uncomfortable with our uncomfortableness? What do we want to do when pain comes up? What do we want to do when that uncomfortableness comes up? We're going to fix it. And we fix it with either trying to control and manipulate situations or people. We try to control it with drugs and alcohol, with shopping, with sex addiction, with whatever is there. We're going to try to push that pain away and fix it that way. And it doesn't work, does it? Because we haven't really taken care of the core of it. He says you must look inside yourself. Here's another one of those lines, and determine that from now on, pain is not a problem. It's just a thing in the universe. Somebody can say something to you that can cause your heart to react and catch fire, but then it passes. It's a temporary experience. So he uses some examples. If you feel insecurity, anybody ever feel insecurity? He says it's just a feeling. That's all it is. It's just a feeling, and you can handle a feeling. If you feel embarrassed, anybody ever feel embarrassed? It's just a feeling, and you can handle a feeling. If you feel jealousy and your heart burns, just look at it objectively. It's a thing in the universe that has the opportunity to just pass through your system. And he said, get to the place where you can laugh at it, have fun with it, and don't be afraid of it. So here's what else he says. If life does something that causes a disturbance inside of you, instead of pulling away, let it just pass through you like the wind. At any moment, you can feel frustration, fear, jealousy, anger, embarrassment, insecurity. And if you watch, you will see that the heart is trying to push it all away. When you feel pain, simply view it as energy. Just start seeing those inner experiences as energy passing through your heart. Then relax. Do the opposite of contracting and closing, which is what we do. Relax and release and allow yourself to be present at the place of tightness and pain. Then relax and go deeper. And this is where we do the heart math work. When we feel that, when we feel these things coming up, and how do we know that they're there? So we feel them in our body, right? I mean, we feel the tightness in our chest. We feel the anxiety in our chest. We feel the tightness in our stomach. Or maybe there's a rush of energy to our brain and we can't think quite clearly. That's the time, my friends, to stop and breathe, And you've got to give yourself permission to do that. And we're going to go back to no matter what somebody thinks. If you need to step apart and take that moment to go, okay, I want to find my center here, step apart and take that moment. If you have to just say, I just need a moment to step away here, or you may not be able to step away. Have enough love for yourself that it doesn't matter what you look like to whoever may be standing there, but that the most important thing to you is I want to come from a place of love and peace in this moment. And I'm not going to be able to do it if my heart's palpitating and my head, I'm going to be able to do it when I take these moments to stop and to breathe into my heart space and to bring that peace back. Now and I've shared this many, many times before. I'm going to share it over and over again because you can create a trigger for yourself to be able to get to that experience very quickly. And I learned this a long time ago. I learned this from Tony Robbins. But it's for me, how I did it was I would let myself go to this place of peace, and then I would squeeze my thumb and my index finger together to trigger into my body that feeling of that peace. And I would let it go. I would just kind of come back, and then I would go back into that place of peace, get to that place of peace, create the trigger. It's amazing to me how now, because I've done this for years, I can squeeze, and it's an immediate release. I can feel it from my heart space, just relaxation. So you can create a trigger even so that when you find yourself in those situations, and when you find yourself in those situations, what do you need to do? Be awake and aware that I'm not going to react. I'm not going to act out. I'm going to respond. I'm going to be responsible in how I'm showing up. And so if I've done this work, I can just use my trigger, find that peace, or I'm going to step away and I'm going to take that time because I don't care what somebody else thinks. Now, I'm saying that as though, that's no big deal. It is a big deal, right? Because you know that people could make fun of you for that. Like, oh my gosh, she just stopped in the middle of everything and just, It's not about what they think. It's not about anybody or anything outside of you. It isn't. And yet, I'm going to tell you this, when you come from that place of peace, that place of centeredness, it is about everything out there. Because you're bringing an energy that perhaps people haven't seen before. They haven't seen somebody who's dedicated to saying, I want to be in a place of peace and centeredness in this. So you are bringing and you are affecting the people and the things around you. Okay, so where I was guided to go with this was in talking about suffering is to Buddhism. And so in Buddhism, they have 4 noble truths. And so when Buddha actually said all life is suffering, and just kind of, step back from that for a minute, because I know when I first heard that, I was like, that goes against everything I believe about unity. All life is suffering. So bear with me on this. But this is what he was referring to. So life is suffering is the first noble truth. It is not that life causes us to suffer. Rather, when we insist the world be what it is not, we cause our suffering. When we recognize rather than deny the fact of impermanence and its tie to suffering, we have taken the first step. How many of us really can embrace the impermanence of life? We like life to stay the same if it's going good. Right? I want everybody to stay in my life who's in my life. Or, guess what? Things change. And it can cause us to go into a place of suffering. The second one is the cause of suffering is our own grasping and clinging, our attachments to our desires. And what this means is our attachments to our desires having to turn out the way that our human mind has decided that they need to turn out. That's why when we use our principles in unity and we say this or something better, we recognize that my human mind doesn't really grasp the greater realm of this creative intelligence. And so the creative intelligence, as I'm putting out my desires, is going to create even greater and grander and in ways that I could never imagine. And sometimes the ways that I never could imagine may take me down a road that doesn't feel good for a little while. You know, when I got divorced after 26 years of marriage, that's not the dream I had for my life. And yet that's exactly what needed to happen to get me to where I'm at today. So it's trusting that process. The third, did I go through that? Yes. The third one is the cessation of suffering is possible. Yay! There is a way out since suffering is not our eternal fate. It's not like it's not, what do you call it? Like a noble thing to suffer. It's taught a lot of times in Christianity. The more you suffer, greater things are going to be in heaven. Well, okay, we don't believe that. If we are willing to look deeply at the nature of life, then we can rise up and truly experience happiness. And so the way that we do that is through what they call the Eightfold Path. And this Eightfold Path, and I'm not going to go over this Eightfold Path today, but I am going to share with you the first two, which is right view and right thought, because that's what we're talking about right now. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that if an individual has a calm state of mind, that person's attitudes and views will be calm and tranquil, even in the presence of agitation. And so right view, according to Reverend Gattuso, who is a unity minister, says that what is called the right view in unity would be called spiritual understanding. And when we move into that place of spiritual understanding, we recognize that life isn't just about our perceptions, that we want to be more aware of life as being something so much greater and grander than what our perceptions are. And she talks about that. The Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh says that we're always watering seeds. And we want to become aware of, am I watering seeds of being misunderstood? Am I watering seeds of victimhood? Am I watering seeds of lack? Am I watering seeds of not enoughness? Am I watering seeds of past hurts and sorrows? Because the seeds of right view are seeds of kindness and compassion and love and hope and truth and oneness. You know, the seeds that we want to be nourishing are the seeds that are expansive. You know, to me, that's always the difference. I know that I'm not in that right place if I'm contracted. I'm in that place when I'm in more of an expansive state. So, right view. Right thought is, and I love this, thinking is the speech of the mind. And so we need to become aware, and this is what this whole thing has been about, that when we're thinking in right view, we are thinking from the higher ideals. We are, that's why getting that centered place, because then we can step back and we can get a higher view of things. We can say, you know, I'm choosing in this place of lack, I'm choosing to focus on the abundance that's all around me. In this place where I may be feeling some dysfunction within a relationship, I'm choosing to see and hold the vision that we can work through this, that we can find a place of peace in this. So we want the right view, and we also want the right thinking. And the last thing that I want to share with you today comes from, how many of us are familiar with Byron Katie's Loving What Is, the work that she does? Just a very few of us. So I'm going to just tell you this really quick, because there's actually four questions that are asked when we're presented with anything, or we're thinking about something. Let's just say I come up with this thing that I'm not enough. Something in me feels like I'm not enough. The first question you ask is it true? Is it true that I'm not enough? And, you know, in that first question, you may be like, well, yeah, you know, yeah, that's true. I'm not enough. The second question is, can you absolutely know that it's true? And I'm going to tell you the answer to that question is almost always no. Almost always no. Can I absolutely know that whatever it is that my mind is thinking, that it's absolutely true? The third question is, How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? How do you react when you think you're not enough? Not good, right? So then the last question is, who would you be without that thought? That is the pivotal question to me. Who would you be without the thought that I'm not enough? Well, I'd be enough. I'd feel good about myself. I would put myself out there more, right? These questions are powerful to use in anything. And then the last thing is turn the thought around. And I'm not going to go into that today. But I encourage you to take these questions and really on anything. You may think you know something about a situation or about somebody, and you start asking these questions, is it true? And you'll be like, yeah, it's true. Can you absolutely know that it's true? And I'm telling you, almost every time, it's like, I can't say that that is absolutely true. How do you react and what would you be without that thought? That's where we want to get. What would we be without that thought? So this week, your homework is to just really focus on your right view and your right thinking and doing the work, be brave. This is what I want to say. Let's be brave, okay? Let's stand in what we talk about every week in our authenticity. Let's not be afraid and cower back from the radiant, amazing beings that we have come here to be. People need to hear this message. They need to see this message coming alive through us so they can know that there's a different way, right? It's up to you, and it's up to me. So let's go out there and let's shine our big, bright, brilliant beam of radiant lights, because we are that. And I say to you, namaste. Namaste. Next week, we're going to talk about imagination. Thank you. Yay! All right. So imagination is next week. Again, using the power of our minds. We love that. Okay. As our ushers are coming forward and our band, I'm going to invite us to take our gifts in our hands that we are here to support this ministry. And, I do want to say here that we do have various fundraisers throughout the year, which we're very, very grateful for, and that the majority of income comes through donations. And, the reality is that churches across the board have been struggling because it's hard these days because we don't push guilt or, you got to tithe 10%. But we do teach conscious giving and giving to places that you want to see thrive, giving to places and people that you want to see grow. So I encourage us to come from that consciousness in our giving, that we want to see Unity of Springfield and Unity as a whole continue to grow and expand and do the amazing work that we are here to do together. So let's take our gifts in our hands and bless it together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And thank you, God.